Hello, and welcome to Sacred Mindshift Circle. I'm your host, Dahlia Dever-Donalds. Today, our guest is a sacred geometry metal artist and earth energy researcher. He handcrafts powerful steel sculptures that raise energetic harmony in homes and sacred spaces. With a background in energy work and geomancy, he combines art and spiritual science to activate healing and connection with the earth's natural grids. Let's welcome Joseph Pio Asterita.
Hello, good afternoon from North Carolina, USA.
Hello, Joseph, and thank you so much for coming on the show. I invited you on because I was very interested in discussing ley lines and sacred geometry, and I know that you have a lot of knowledge about this. And I just wanted to start off by asking you, how did you gather all of this information about the Earth's energy points and the grid, the energy grid on this Earth?
Well, it started about 30 years ago when I lived in upstate New York and hiking through the mountains up there. I started sensing, I guess I was born with this in type of gift, where I could sense changes as I walked through the forest. Changes in the energy from a joy to neutral to some kind, not so happy. And I started reading a lot about Native American lore and how the Native Americans honored the earth. So I think the first step in this is honoring the earth, honoring Gaia. And I started writing poetry, reading poetry about the earth. And once you open the door, everything starts in. You know, and then as I started walking through the mountains and the trees, I could feel them, believe it or not, communicating with me. So I think it's a mutual admiration and a respect that for nature, for the elemental kingdom, that we are visitors here and we've come to explore and appreciate this and experience it. And then from there, it started to snowballing, from just simple communication with a tree or what have you, into energy patterns, vortices, ley lines. And when I moved to North Carolina, I really got into ley lines big time. And ley lines started in going into blocked ley lines. And then what blocks a ley line, you know, and then we had to clear that, you know. I've got all of this in the presentation. So it was like just going from, you know, the first grade, second grade, third grade, all the way up until you're into advanced college calculus. And now, you know, here we are. So.
And for people who don't really know what ley lines are, can you give a description of what is it?
Okay, well, I have the presentation that I put together here, so we could start with that.
Yeah, that's great. Let's go to the presentation. And we're going to take a look at basically all of the information that you have to show us.
Okay, I'm going to explode. I'm going to disappear from my screen, but you should still see this.
Yep, I see it.
Okay. So here we are, the introduction to earth energies and energy blockages. So you asked, what is a ley line, for example? But I want to use this type of example. You're familiar now with the meridians and acupuncture points in the human body. So you can see how, let me get my pointer here. See all of these meridian lines that run up and down. These are energy lines, energy grids that run around the human body. And from there, the acupuncture works on when they get blocked, they put the puncture point here to clear it. And if I'm not too good at acupuncture, excuse me if I'm saying this wrong, but the whole idea is to get the similarity between the human, and now let's go to the earth, and you have something similar. This is just one example of an earth grid system. So what you saw in the human body is also now exists on the earth, because the earth is a living thing, living organism. Gaia is a living sentient entity. Any questions?
No, continue.
Okay, so if you got this now understanding, this is just one grid system. There are many grid systems, so many that you would see millions of lines passing around there. And these are all telluric energies that are on an etherical plane, and they're on a different frequency, so we cannot sense them normally. But if you use dowsing rods or certain types of meters, you can pick them up. So let's go now into something probably it's closer. Now here's the energy grid for
the UK, correct?
Yeah, this is Leylines in England. Yeah, some of the lines extend to or from points that extend into the sea. If you notice, like over here, there's a point here that this point of land will start a energy grid going to another point of land down here, or this point of land will go to this point of land. And this forms a pattern. So the pattern is where the land meets the sea. And if it's a sharp incursion where the land meets the sea, that's usually a point where energy flows. And ask questions if you got any.
It's okay. Well, one question or one thing that I've noticed is when it comes to speaking about ley lines, I noticed that in England, they tend to talk about it a lot more. Like, I think it sounds as if like they are more familiar with it. I don't understand why, because I haven't heard so many Americans or other countries in Europe talk about it.
That's true. That's true. Well, the English discovered it. They're the ones who figured it all out, and they are still avant-garde. They still lead the world in this. If you have one famous English researcher, and it's Rory Duff, is still writing and coming out with amazing finds on ley lines. And so, matter of fact, the word ley, L-E-Y, came from the British tax collector, and the story goes that he drew a tax map and noticed that all of the people whose last name ended in L-E-Y. So you had like Finlay, Crawley, Howley, were on a straight line. He drew the line and was not on a road, but noticed that for some reason they were attracted to this grid system. And so he called it the L-E-Y, lines, because that's one approach and where the names came from, and that the English, yes, indeed, are pioneers. And it's very popular in England and in Europe. You come to the United States, everybody says, oh, really? Yeah, okay. And it's opening up here, too. And this, mainly the research I'm going to show you is what I've done here in the United States. Okay. Here's another famous one. This is the Michael Mary line. And we get into this point here, where you see this point of land, and it runs across here to an astronomical alignment, the Mayday sunrise. But on this line, you have a lot of sacred places: Canterbury Castle, the Saint Michael here, Tower of Saint Michael, Glastonbury. So this comes to the idea of the chicken or the egg. Which came first, the ley line or people joining this line? They were attracted to it, and then they magnify it. And that's usually, from my finding, the line exists, and I'll go through the different types of lines in a minute. And then you will see that it's there, and then people are attracted to it. All right, so here we go. You ready to dive into this?
Yes.
All right. So there are three types of Earth energy systems here. I'm going to call about the simple ley line, energy vortex, and then we have how energy flows from point to point, like you have seen and I showed you before on the Michael Mary line. So the telluric energy ley line that's due to inner Earth composition. Could be crystals, could be magnetic fields inside the Earth will cause that to happen. And people are drawn to that energy. I have seen battlefield ley lines where there's a line running across eastern United States that has 5 major battles on it. And they're not connected. These points are not connected by any roads or anything. But apparently, somehow, during the Civil War and the American Revolution, generals were, the armies moved and converged and met on that particular line, albeit in the course of like 500 or 600 miles across.
So when these lines are there, and we are sometimes drawn to do certain things on those lines, is it because of the vibration that we are on that resonates with that line, or what is the explanation?
I'm sure that has a lot to do with it. It's there's something within our subconscious or in our energy field makeup is attracted, picks that up. Our aura is kind of like a compass, in a way, and it like attracts like. So because of the vibrant energy field, you're attracted to it. Now that there's contaminated, which we call violet ley lines, and we'll go through that too. Does that answer your question?
Yeah. So one thing I was going to add on is, so for example, if in this area, in this part of the States where there have been many battles, right? And it just so happens that the battles are happening there, that would make that ley line maybe a lower vibrational ley line, no? That's attracting that aspect of wanting, like, war.
Correct. Excellent. Yes. And what happens is, now there's the natural flow of energy that's going on that line. Now, when you get, say, in this case, in one case, a battlefield that happens there, two armies meet, and you have thousands of men killed, animals just killed, especially if it's, cavalry and what have you. And that is a trauma to the planet. That's a trauma to the planet. And that it's like a garden hose. They look at the ley line as a garden hose. And now you have this trauma happens. It's like getting the garden hose and pinching it. Water's still flowing through, but there's a blockage. And that blockage is not good for Gaia in itself. It's part of I'll show you later on the initial, I have a slide on that. Oh, that's going to come up later on, where a battle will actually block a particular type of. So let's say go back to the example of the meridians on your body. So if you were injured and what have you, these meridians get out of balance. It's the same type of thing, and then the acupuncturist will put punctures there to affect the total meridian. So they maybe put something here to affect something way up here. Now, excuse me if I'm not getting it right, but do you see the relationship between?
Yeah. In other words, it creates a blockage, but the energy is there, but you have to basically, in the end, which I guess you're going to explain, unblock it basically by.
Oh, yeah.
Would it be like bringing in new energy?
Much in detail. This is more or less like explaining it. Mm-hmm. Pretty much that how to find a blockage and how to work with it, but getting into clearing a blockage, that's much more advanced type of work, which maybe we could cover in another episode. Okay, so we have energy vortices here, and I will go more in detail into that. And then we have the point to point. So here we have a mountain, and I'm going to show you a lot of these on a map here in North Carolina. We have a mountain and a river, or a mountain or a lake, or a mountain or this could be a seashore. And
it's always connected to water.
Not always. That could go from mountain to mountain.
Okay.
That's usually a dead giveaway, mountain to water. And I'll show a ley line on how that works. All right, because here you would have the masculine and there the feminine. So there's this automatic line attraction back and forth to it. Okay, so I'm going to go now into a particular ley lines of mountains in North Carolina in the United States. So here we go. This is Pilot Mountain. It's the energetic powerhouse in the Southeast United States. It's part of a mountain range, and you can see back here more of the mountains, but this stands up high because of its prominent peak, its makeup of granite and crystal. And there's actually another part to it, which is over here, where I took the picture from. And so you have this photo, and there's a trail that's going around it. But it's a major energy center in the southeast United States, Pilot Mountain. So here is a typical ley line, not a typical, here is a major ley line that connects all of the major cities in the on the East Coast of the United States. So here you see again, people are drawn hundreds of years ago to this line that starts, that is Pilot Mountain, but this line connects all the way down into Mexico, the volcanoes that are just south of Mexico City. Those 2 points of energy are communicating back and forth. So that there's that attraction line, but notice it again, it goes through this point of land over here, up across to this major mountain, and it just keeps going to this other point of land here, which is Washington, D.C. area, where the Potomac comes in. And then we have the Chesapeake coming in. So you see how this play starts, and this goes all the way through to Stonehenge in England, and then through Eastern and Western Europe and down into Riyadh, passes the Holy Land. It is a powerful ley line. It's called the City Ley Line or the Appalachian Ley Line.
So it cuts right through the Appalachian Mountains and continues all the way into the Holy Land.
Yes, well, it parallels. Here's the Appalachians about 20, 30 miles away from this line.
What are some of the things that are found on this ley line as far as the energy, for example? Are there any Masonic symbols? Have there been a lot of, I don't know, any kind of monuments built on those ley lines throughout the states that are known?
The big one is in D.C. with the Washington Monument. That's 550 feet high. Okay, and that is a big power center here. And then that monument is designed as the obelisks that are in ancient Egypt. So the Egyptians had this all figured out 4,000 or 5,000 years ago. And when their obelisks were taken down and spread out around the countries, a different country, like France has a big Egyptian obelisk, and I think who else has got one? That disrupted the ancient energy lines, but that's another subject altogether. So there's Pilot Mountain here, and the Washington Monument went up on later, but it's basically energy that's running through here. There's a second ley line, which is the Serpent Ley Line that goes from Serpent Mound through Pilot Mountain. This is an ancient, one of the oldest sites in the United States, Native American site. It's anywhere from 500 to 3,000 years old. They can't really tell. We're going to go through this ley line and when we did the clearing. So if you connect this ley line, this energy's here is attracted to Pilot Mountain, which of course is attracted to this point right here. Now you have another ley line. And this one was really blocked, and I'll go through the blockages on this ley line. I mean, there are ley lines all over the place here. There are thousands of them, but I'm just going through the major two.
Why is that one called the Serpent Mound? Is there anything symbolic or significant about it?
Yeah, there is a very ancient Native American site that's about 1,100 feet long, and it's a serpent. It's made in the serpent, and it's built up in a mound, and it's just beautifully done. So it's a very powerful energy center. So you have this powerful energy center connecting to that powerful energy center to this point in land, and wacko, you've got it. I'll have a picture of this coming up later on. So this line is so strong that this is rock formation. I took this standing on Pilot Mountain. Do you see these rocks, these lines cut in the rock, these grooves? Well, this groove here is the City Ley Line or the Appalachian Ley, and this groove over here is Serpent Mound. So the energy in this part of the mountain was so strong that it actually split and cracked the rocks. Well, when they were splitting, they went into the formation where the ley lines run through.
And what do you feel when you are in that point where you're in a conjunction of two different ley lines? Is it something like an overwhelming, obviously it's different for people who already have a dawn, like a spiritual connection. But what do you feel when you're standing in a point where there's a conjunction of two very powerful ley lines?
I have this feeling of awe. And like, but this is a dramatic view to start with. I mean, you're standing here, you're about 2,300 feet up and you're looking out, seeing all this country. So that's enough to stop the clock on anybody. But yeah, I have an additional feeling of awe and well-being. And there I was, this was a while back. I was much older then. My hair was still on. Anyway, here I am putting crystals in that same spot to help augment the energy system.
Well, I've done a session about crystals and how they magnify the energy. Can you explain a little bit how you were using the crystals to magnify the ley line?
Yeah, it's basically, I don't use them much, but usually if there's a problem with a ley line, I put crystals on either side of the problem to help as a jumper, like a jumper cables on your battery system,
in order to clear it, correct? So it's a way of starting to clear it.
And clear it if you work with it, yes. If you work with the clear, there's a clearing procedure, but that's advanced work. But just notice that this is one way of doing it. All right, so that's the overview of ley lines. Now I want to do vortices. Okay.
Yeah, let's continue.
All right, so vortices, they are basically mini spiral energy emanating from Gaia, ranging in size from a foot or two to like 30, 40, 50, 100 feet. And they normally spin, and there's 5 types, as you can see: clockwise, counterclockwise, counter-rotating, and counter-rotating one way, then counter-rotating the other.
If you are spiritually
go ahead.
If you are spiritually sensitive, I don't know. I've thought recently that I was observing something similar to a vortex in the distance. I live pretty high up, and I don't know, maybe it was in my head, but it seemed as if it was something doing a rotation, and it looked kind of like energy because it looks like kind of like a haze. And what I did notice was that the birds were going in the same direction as what my eyes were looking at. So I don't know if it was in my head, but it was very interesting because I did notice that the birds in the sky were doing a furious turn, just like what I thought I was looking at in the distance. So I don't know if...
Excellent. Yes, very good. And another way to find some of these, you feel it. I have encountered vortices that were so powerful and beautiful, I could sense them 100 feet away. And normally I use my dowsing rods to find them. And in this case, forget the rod, I just ran to it. It was the most profound experience. Other times, sickening and very, very sad, depending on what happened there. Also now, if there are trees near this vortex, you will look up into the branch system, and you'll see the branches are actually following the rotation of the vortex. It's another way to find these things. If you look up walking through the woods and you see branches that seem from 3 or 4 different trees that seem to be orbiting around one central point, then you just go stand right under there and you may feel it. Again, it depends on the type of energy, your aura system at the time, et cetera, et cetera. But usually when using pendulum or dowsing rods, they're really good. That's what I use most of the time, is dowsing rods.
These vortices, these vortices, when they're moving around, they just occur and then dissipate, or it usually stays put?
Sometimes they are fixed. Sometimes they are transitory. Sometimes they come out at certain times of the day and then go on at other times of the day. This is the Wild West. There's so many different options out here. And I'm just telling you my experiences, what I have found over the last 20 years or so. And I'm constantly finding new stuff. So this is just a scratch beginning, is what I'm telling you here, based on my experiences. Somebody else may have totally different experiences that could add to this instead of contradict it, Now,
okay. Yeah, let's continue. Let us know.
All right. So number 5 is going to open up a whole new gate. And that is the elemental spirit presence. Now, let's read that bottom there. When encountered, this may feel blissful, neutral, or depressing as my experience with the elemental kingdom at grandfather tree. Now, here comes the first story, if you're ready for it. I used to do a lot of
course.
I used to do a lot of hiking through the forest and the mountains in upstate New York. And I came across one area that was always depressing. Always depressing. I walked by and there was this old ancient oak tree there. I used to call it grandfather tree. And it was so sad, so very sad. And I think there was a murder or some sort of massacre nearby because there was a lot of Revolutionary War battles in this area and problems with the tribes, Native Americans against colonists. This goes back 200 years, if not more. And so I started doing healing there. I would bring crystals and I was bringing the light and pray for the tree. And after the course of a month or two of doing this twice a week for about a month or so, I noticed the tree was happy. It wasn't depressed anymore. And I go, this is wonderful. So I sat there and I meditated under this tree and I see this movement go across my psychic energy field. And I go, uh-oh. Somebody's here. Who is this? And a voice comes to me, a very nice voice, and it says, oh, thank you for helping this tree out. Yeah, and I go, you're welcome. And we had this conversation going, and the voice said, it's surprising that a human would stop to work and help a tree. Thank you very much. Because normally they just walk right by, nobody cares, and sometimes they cause the problem. So I stopped for a minute to write down. I always carry this notebook with me. So when I'm in the field, I jot down notes. This was before these things came out. And as I'm writing this out, I broke the connection. And then as I wrote this whole screen down about what have you, and I went back and I said, oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry I'm breaking the connection. And I came back and the voice said, it was feminine now, and said that you should do healing for people as well. And I said, no, people, no, they're hard to work with. They're always arguing with me or what have you. And she said, but we're all connected. All humans are connected in the heart. And he actually gave me a vision of a series of people and lines, like a grid lines running into heart to heart to heart. So we are part of our own human grid system that runs around the pond. Anybody you know you are connected with through a grid from your heart center to their heart center. So the more spiritual you become, you start raising the grid energy for everybody who is in that around you. And there's more about this. I'll talk about this more.
Yeah, no, but actually, I mean, out of all the podcasts that I've been doing, everyone is saying the same, that it's the heart energy that is the one that's going to ascend us. And one question, when you said that you were meditating under the tree, what kind of a meditation would you do under the tree, or what would you visualize to clear or heal the tree?
Well, at that particular time, I collapse into my heart center and just feel that glow and glow and glow and coming bigger and larger and larger. And sometimes I put my hand over my heart, left heart, and I bring it out. I see the glow within the heart and move the hand out, and the glow goes along with it. And as I move my hand out, the glow gets bigger and bigger. It goes about the size of a beach ball. And you just sit in that glow and you go into silence. Simple as that. And you just, if you want to send that love out energy, because don't forget it's coming down from the higher dimensions through you into your heart center, and you send it out to the Gaia in love and respect and balance. But you make that commitment, you make that visualization, then you stay quiet, you just let it run.
But do you visualize the tree, that the energy touches the tree?
Say again?
Do you visualize that energy attaches to the tree?
Yeah, you just send it out whatever is needed. wherever is needed. You don't know if the tree is broken down below or 20 feet away or what, or way up in the top. You know, you just send it out as needed. And that's where you let the creator, you let the higher realms do that. We just bring in the light and they send it out.
So we are just kind of like an extension cord, kind of like I guess, like an antenna.
Yeah. You're a transmitter. You receive and retransmit. It flows through you. And it's very peaceful. So I reconnect with this energy, with this spirit. And I said, you know, I'm sorry. I forgot to ask you your name. And I forgot what the name was, but I asked, are you male or female? And then the response I got was amazing. I got this tremendous download of feminine energy. Just flowed right through me. It was just so beautiful. And that was her gratitude to me for saving grandfather tree. See, she, even though on a higher realm, could not clear that problem with grandfather tree, albeit she's a diva. If we ever get into the elemental kingdom, we'll go into the different strata of beings within the elemental kingdom. She's fairly up there in the fifth dimension, but she could not clear that problem. And the reason is because that problem came from the earth. So it takes somebody from the earth to clear a problem in the earth. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that sounds also like what I've heard. Whatever happens on the earth has to be worked out here. It's a little bit biblical in some cases, in some stories, but yes.
Yeah. Okay. All right. Now that changes depending on the situation, but it's mainly it. And that's when we get into the battlefield clearings and what have you. All right. Well, that was a big one right there. So I have pictures now of vortices, actual photographs. Now here's one here that was taken in Bogota by my niece, and she just happened to take a shot of her altar. And you see the center, see how it spirals in? See the spirals?
Yeah. It's a light. It looks like a light coming in.
Yeah, it's a blasting light that came through the roof of the apartment, you know, and down into her altars over here. But here is an example of energy vortex.
I saw a picture similar to this once when I went to Lourdes, where there was, the Virgin of Lourdes in France. And it was really weird because I took the picture and it's as if obviously I couldn't see very clear if it was making a circular image inside of it, but it was like coming down, and it was very interesting because it was like very bright and it's hitting the exact source. And I know that I've heard that where that area is, if you know the story of Lourdes with the water and everything where the grotto was, is this an energy point also maybe in France?
Yes, yeah, probably an interdimensional portal. You know, a lot of these vortices are pinpoints or points of interdimensional energy flowing back and forth. And that's the gateway. So in Lourdes, when the Virgin Mary appeared, she just comes from a higher dimension through that gateway into that point. They're all over the planet. I've spoken to people who have found internet friend of mine was hiking in the Alps and found the gateway and came out in the Himalayas. He walked in and came in. He knew he was in the Himalayas because he got out his GPS and that's where he was. But you have to know where. Otherwise, if you don't know where to go back, you're stuck there. So there's stories about this all over. And this is a picture right here of one application of a vortex. There's gateways all over the place. But I'm just again showing you ideas of things I found. And there's more to come. So here's one hiking. A friend of mine took this, Mary, in a field, and she just looks down and sees this energy swirling around. So she gets out her phone and takes this picture. And then you can start to see the geometry here, right? You see, we have this.
It's absolutely beautiful.
Isn't it beautiful? Yeah, it's one point, and it vortexes down to another, then it opens up, but it flows. It's not, this is straight line, but this is more feminine. It occurs into a circle, and then you have this energy flowing out. And if you look in here, you'll see a little face, probably a little fairy or what have you, or a gnome.
What would you do, for example, seeing this and seeing that energy vortex, or like in that area, what would that tell you?
A few things. That is a portal. That is an energy center right there. Or an elemental being decided to make itself known, and as you walk by, and of course being sensitive, and somehow she's called to go to these different places with your phone, and sometimes shoved, get there now, and she's running through the woods and stops it, okay, and takes a picture right there, boom. She snaps the picture, and like that. Now look at this one here. You see the same type of pattern. Yeah. You have vortices within vortices within vortices spinning around.
That's absolutely beautiful.
Isn't it?
Yeah. Because maybe we see these things and, we don't recognize what we're looking at and we dismiss it and keep moving. But with the camera, she's captured it beautifully.
Yeah. And so people say, that's a lens flare, but this happens way too often to be a lens flare. Then there wasn't even moving at this point. So this is an introduction into grid system. But again, I have to say, this is the most important grid system, the humanity heart grid system. We're all connected. Jesus said we are all one, and in the quantum theory, we are all one. There's all one. We're all, but here is the connection point where we are one in this grid system right here. So this is why heart meditation is important, because it raises the energy of everybody else. I guess it was it a couple of years back, maybe 20, 30 years ago, there was that principle that came out, 6 degrees of separation. Have you ever heard of that?
Okay, yeah, but I'm not very clear entirely. I don't remember, but I have heard of the name of it.
Well, if the theory was, and it was proven once, that if you send out a postcard to everybody and tell them to send out a postcard to everybody they know, that it'll go around the world, and on the 6th time, it'll come back to you. And part of the caveat is you don't send it to these people, what have it. But they've shown that this works, So basically, if you start heart meditation and sending it out to everybody they know, and if they get in on this, if you have a group meditation and they start sending it out, you encompass the whole world in 6 trips around, ideally. But that's just something to think about. You ready for the next step?
Yes, let's continue.
We doing good?
Yeah, and actually, I know you said that maybe in another video, but just before you finish, you don't have to go too in depth with the clearing, but I really would like us just to have a little bit of clue of how to clear some of the energy blockages afterward, towards the end. Just give us a little bit of hint of ways, like for example, with the crystals, with to clear the energy ley lines.
Sure. That's all right. That's a class in itself, but I can go briefly on how you would do something like that.
We do a crash course really quick.
Okay, so now blockages to earth energies. So I explained this before. If here we go back to the meridian system here. If there was an injury here, it would block that meridian. And that's what the healer would do to remove that. And, sometimes they would have to go way over here to heal something that's over here. Remote healing in a way. And that's could be done when we do earth energy systems. Does this help?
Yeah, I can see it perfectly and I understand.
Okay, so now let's go back to this drawing where we had this grid line going between this river and the mountain. And then a city pops up. People are attracted there. And depending on the energy of the city, this could drag down the energy of the ley line, or it could amplify it. And over here, between the river and the lake, a battlefield broke out. This would squash the energy, turn it negative, and cause chaos. I have seen situations where something like this would cause chaos. People start drowning, boats start colliding here. It's like it's a bad luck lake, and that's because this energy now is distorted. It's way out of frequency, and it causes chaos as it goes through here.
Related to 9/11 and New York, for example, when something that horrible happened to so many people in the city, and the city already has a very dense energy. how would something like what happened on 9/11 even amplify that negative sensation or vibration for the city? What was your opinion when it occurred?
Well, I was there when it occurred. Luckily, Midtown, I wasn't downtown, but I could see and I could feel it took me a long time to leave the city and go back up to the mountains where I went hiking. And there's a ceremony, a Native American ceremony you can use to clear this energy. It's called the Four Directions, but everybody, you talk about the four directions, it's far more complicated than just four directions. These are four gateways into higher consciousness. And if you work with these gateways, north, south, east, and west, this happens to be where they line up, then you bring in all this higher energy. And that's how you clear, by using the simple four direction ceremony, which is actually four gateway ceremonies. And you open up these gates and you bring in the light, the company of heaven, to clear the damage.
But
Okay.
when it occurred, did it create like a what was the repercussion for the city, that trauma?
There were thousands, 3,000 people killed. And I know of at least 1,000 that were cleared just by using that ceremony. They actually transitioned. They couldn't when somebody dies in trauma, they have a hard time transitioning because of the trauma, the shock that they went through. And they're confused. They can't get they are mentally blocked, emotionally blocked from the trauma of their death. And that's where you need light to come in, to open the gates, to show them gently through.
Yeah, I've heard of this also. I mean, this is the concept when you go into certain occult practices, it's that these are the souls that are very easy to manipulate because they've died in a very negative way, and then they can be used for sorcery and other things because they are disconnected or something like this. As far as the city itself, though, is what I'm asking. The city itself, but because what some people say is that when these things happen, besides sometimes people think these are sacrifices done on purpose to create that negative energy on that ley line or in that area. What would be the repercussion for the city itself, the energy of the city, when something like that in that proximity happens, like the ley line of the city of New York?
Well, that's the Appalachian Lake. The first ley line, I tell you, the city of New York and Washington is on that ley line. I mean, this is big guns. So you have the financial capital of the world, New York, and then you have the political capital of the world, the U.S., on the same ley line as Pilot Mountain. So I mean, there's constant. You can go with something, and then an hour later, it's back in the sewer again, because of this. It's the human nature. Yeah, the human nature. So usually, you don't go charging into this unless you're directed to. If this is your calling, then you do it. But just you don't volunteer unless you really feel the impulse that I've got to do this. There's a lot of teams working out there, both in this dimension and other dimension. You don't want to get in somebody else's way who's got the answer. So what I've learned, if you don't get the impulse, it's not for me, you just back out and let somebody else do it. There's a lot of teams doing this type of clearing. And you can do clearings, and then, there's another riot, there's more stuff going on, there's another problem, and the energy goes back down again,
When it comes to certain areas being infiltrated with a lot of negative energy, or I would even say demonic energy, it's usually because that ley line is permitting them to enter, right? There has to be a portal somewhere that is allowing them to function in that area. How could someone who is called to healing, how would they begin? Just a crash course of someone who is already experimented in this, how would they begin to clear and heal that area where there's some kind of portal or demonic energy entering into certain areas?
That's a complicated question. That there are various ways to do this, and I just can't get into this now because this is a 101 course, and you're talking about a 444 course, right? So,
okay.
The answer, not to leave you hanging, is that you would just again go into the heart center. and have that light radiate out. And the, you know, I don't know if you
But
ever
it
heard
would
of.
have to be in a group. Would it have to be in a group depending? It would have to be a group effort, like you said, because you said there are teams out there.
Yes, the more, you know, two or more are gathered in my name, I'm among you. So yes, in a group effort, yes. Yes, that would be good. Male, female, it doesn't matter, you know, but even if you do a male, female, there's a ways that the energy balances, you know, female. The ladies would be doing one type of meditation and men are doing another type, and it acts as a cyclone to clear, you know, and raise back up. So I would say if you know about this, just hold the light and see it going and just do the pilgrimage within and let it go at that. Now, there's a difference. I don't know if you ever heard of Thomas Merton, famous American mystic. He said,
No, I haven't heard of him.
the difference, you know, he talked about the pilgrimage into within, but cautions when the pilgrimage becomes a crusade and you start going out, stay within. You know, if you're called to go out, that's part of it. But don't, I'm going to go out, I'm going to fix this, you know, and we're going to stop this hurricane. You have to let nature run its course. You got to know where you fit in. You got to know where you fit in. I had a channeling once from an Arcturian in a higher dimension, and she said that 90% of the work we do is cleaning up what you energy workers are doing on the earth. Because you go in, you down what we just fixed, you know, they got to go back and yeah. So
Okay.
Yeah.
So tell me a little bit, before we go into a little bit of sacred geometry, I just wanted to ask you a little bit about your background, because obviously we're talking about many different things and dimensions. Just give us a little bit also about your background, because you are Catholic as well, correct?
Yeah, very much so. Yeah.
So tell me, how does that fit in with all of the things you've learned, and when you first started to get the channels and the downloads, how did you basically combine it in a way, or when you spoke to your family, what did they think?
Yeah, I learned that you got to be careful who you tell this to. In my first mystical experience, I went to a priest and was spoken down to that only priests have these experiences, and you know, you should stop being a child. And okay, all right. So you walk out and you just don't do that anymore. But eventually I realized, and through guidance and what have you, and then reading certain parts of the scripture, you know, when Jesus said, this you can do more, this you can do what I do and more. I'm paraphrasing, and I could do what he did and more. So then it started to realize again the oneness of creation, the oneness of all. And so I'm a follower of Jesus and what's in the Gospels and what have you. And I read the Old Testament at times. I read some of the epistles and what, you know, but you got to keep it on that quantum theory of quantum entanglement and all is one. Okay. And if
Yeah,
you
because
do it, you'll find it. You'll find it's there.
yeah, because I think you know, one thing that I really believe is that everything that Jesus was here to teach us about was basically this concept of like you said, oneness, and that we can override all of these different experiences if we just connect with our heart. And I think people just didn't understand it in that time. So, you know.
Yeah, well, he was a quantum physicist talking to people who were still using mules and donkeys to carry, you know, just so you had to put it in stories. You had to put it in stories so they can understand it. I have a few more slides on a ley line and how that was cleared. Or you tell me if you want to see that, or if you want to go just jump into sacred geometry.
Well, first, let's finish the ley lines, because I really love that topic, and then we'll go into the sacred geometry.
Okay. All right. So, well, wait a minute. I got to share the screen. Here we go. Oh, this time I see you now. Okay.
Perfect.
Right.
I see it.
Now we want to go to the next slide. Oh, I got to do that over here. Okay. So here we are back to, again, Pilot Mountain. And now we're going to connect Serpent Mound to Pilot Mountain to see here are the blockages. Here are the first blockages. And let me just go through these particular points. So this is Serpent Mound. I don't know if you can see the head here, but this mound is anywhere from 2 to 4 feet high, and it's all packed with dirt, and it goes and it forms this right over here. It's about
And
11.
in this mound, there are crystals or anything else in it? What's inside of it?
I think it was built on an energy center. It was built on an energy center. And I don't know about crystals, but I know the dowsing rods, when the pendulum just spun around like a propeller, a helicopter blade when I went over here. So here's another view of it. You can see the egg, and this is an artist's conception of it to make it a bit more pronounced, because this at one time was estimated to be 6 to 8 feet high. Now it's down to 2 to 3 feet. It's thousands of years old, perhaps. The archaeologists are all over the radar screen with this one. So this is at the north end. Here's Pilot Mountain in the middle. So you got 2 big energy centers, and it's connecting to this point down here. Now, this point over here is, what's the name of it?
What is that, Mississippi?
No, this is, hold on, the Antipoda Cape Fear. This is the Cape Fear outlet. This is the Point Cape Fear right here. And this is the Frying Pan Shoals. A lot of ships are damaged. As you can see that the ocean, and then it comes up. So this here is part of this, and this is why this energy is attracted to this over here. It was what we showed before, the map of England. It's a point of one type of matter into the ocean, land into ocean. So the energy funnels down that way. Look at Pilot Mountain is like a lighthouse. It's blasting out energy all over the place, but it picks up certain particular complementary points that it forms a line, solid energy line right there. So, but look at this. You have the Civil War Fort Caswell, and you have the USS North Carolina that was blocking. This is from World War II. This is the Civil War, blocking this energy. It was depleting it. So I first went and we did our research on Pilot Mountain. We saw, when we actually looked down psychically and through guidance, we saw that blockages, and we had to go down. So we went down, a friend of mine, Mark, and his wife, Linnea, we went down there to clear this. So here's the USS North Carolina. So it's a big battleship, very famous in World War II and Korean War. And it was hit with a torpedo here, and there was 7 men or 8 men killed. So we figured, this is how spirit works. About a week or 2 before this, I was watching TV, and no matter where I went to, it was always about World War II, the Navy, and kamikazes, and what have you. And there was a TV show about ghost trackers or something, and there was this ship is haunted, big time haunted. So I said, whoops, we got to go there and clear it. I got to feel it because of all of these signs, every time no matter what channel I would turn to, there was World War II and battleships. So I got it. Okay. So Mark and I go out on our motorcycles, and we have it's a lot of fun when you do this, because you go out with a group. You don't do this alone. This is no job for the faint of heart. Usually you go out in a group, and each person of the group brings their own gifts. So we have certain people. I went a group of 3 or 4 with some women who are they could see. We call radar. We used to call Carol, we used to call her radar, and then there was tail gunner, and there was it's a lot of fun. You have a lot of fun to this, but it gets serious as all hell. Let me tell you, when you start getting in there to do a clearing, it is gut wrenching. Anyway, so here is the battleship, and here's a ramp that goes on, and this is the museum, if this makes any sense. So Mark and I, we park our motorcycles here, we come and we look at the museum, we say, we have to get on the ship and go over here to the left side and do the clearing. Never happened. We couldn't even get on the ship. There was nobody there. We were the only ones. There was about 3 or 4 people. As we walked up the ramp, we got hit with a wall of violent hatred. I mean, it was like a thunderstorm, a violent wind of hate and anger, just pushing us back. Oh, do you feel what is going on here? So we started doing, we were both energy healers. We started doing what we call Lahu Chi, bringing in the light and sending love and light, and sending love and light and praying, because it's just more of a vehicle. You send it down and out. Love this light, love it, reverse it. And what happened, little by little, the energy, anger stopped, And then this figure appeared at the end of the plank up on the ship. And it was this Japanese fighter pilot. Not him. This is Sugiburo Sagai. This is a picture close of what we were up against.
So it was a ghost. It was basically the anger of
trap soul, ghost, trap soul. Okay. And apparently was shot down by the ship, and he went into the ship, and now he's haunting it because he never crossed over. And so we're sending him love and light. Now we got through the hatred, and we started sending him through the heart, love and light, love, 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 just standing there, the two of it, nobody else anywhere in sight. And all of a sudden this comes into smiling, and then we actually seen him make his ascension, and up he goes. And as he's going up, there's this whirlwind of love and light. We were in ecstasy. I mean, just because the love now that's he's transmitting out and he's going up. Just beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. So this is one story.
When they and it really can happen that quickly if a group of people are working together to transmit that for a trapped soul, correct?
Yes. Remember the pilgrimage and remember the crusade. Do it. You have to do it with pure love and intent, and ego is put in the back. You're going out to help. This is a calling. This is a commitment. You're going out to help, not to prove yourself. Okay. It requires a lot of integrity to stay that way. A lot of it. You are on a mission to help.
It takes work because we're all human, and I guess that the ego has to be crushed, right? To be able to do that.
Right. Ego has its place, when you're crossing the street or you're driving a car, look out. But, when you start making it run the whole show, that's out of control. All right. So the next one now, remember there was the North Carolina. So we cleared the North Carolina. The next one was the fort. Fort Caswell was a Civil War Confederate fort that never saw a battle. The Union did not want to attack this one. But when the war was ended and the Confederates left, they blew up part of it, but it was rebuilt. Anyway, there were trap souls here. So I went in with Mark and Linnea. There they are. And we're walking through here. And as I'm walking through, Mark is out in front of me. And he's being held back because there's this ramp that goes down. This is the best story. This ramp that goes down. And he's like, oh, shit, there's something really bad down there. I'm not going down there. And of course, that's what I go, So I'm walking down, and there's this dark ramp and this big, I guess it was the magazine that was repaired. And I'm walking down, and all of a sudden, right in front of me, this big whirlwind starts spinning, and in the middle of it pops up this Confederate soldier who is long black hair. He's 9 to 10 feet high, growling and snarling at me, and I'm looking up, like this. Now I was in the military, and I was a senior NCO. So immediately I saw his uniform, and I looked at his arm, and he only had 2 stripes. He was a corporal. He's a junior NCO. So, hey, military protocol, no matter what dimension you're in. So I looked at him and I said, Corporal, hey, I know what you're going through. Because I used to go through this being an NCO. You get trouble from up above. The officers want you to do this. The men below you said don't want to do it. You're stuck in the middle. And it's another aggravation. I've been there. I know what you're. I know what you're. He's like, what the heck up there? And he's looking at me, snarling, and all of a sudden it becomes peaceful. And as I'm explaining this, he starts agreeing with me, and then he breaks out laughing. And he went from this angry thing to this laughing thing because I was speaking the same language. And he just laughs, and poof, disappears right in front of me.
When you do these communications, this is all telepathic, correct? When you're communicating with these entities and these souls.
Well, I was talking out loud, which of course would be terrible. This is pretty tough situation to be in right now, So, normally you think a ghost is this little thing, right? No, this was like 8. I mean, he was way up there. And snarling and just, I can see the vibrations coming out of him. So, but we figured it out, both had the same in common, and then he just broke out laughing and poof, up he went. disappeared.
After
All right.
that, did you end up clearing the rest of the energy in that area? Because you said that there were a couple of souls down there.
Yeah, but Mark and Linnea did the rest. Even ETs were there. So I mean, just you get into so much when you do this type of stuff. So
speaking of ETs that you just mentioned, that as far as like the states, because you always hear these stories that they have a lot of reptilian creatures that live under the ground, that live under the earth. Do they are they, well, I imagine, right, they're manipulating the energy, obviously, of the ley lines above them.
Possibly, yeah. They're all over the place, and some of them are rather friendly, and some are okay. Some are nasty as all hell. Like people, they don't different. But that's yeah. We've come across a few of them. So now, when I said before, when you do this type of work, it's not for the faint of heart, because now this is all kind of nice what I told you. Then here is the other side of the ley line. This is the United States, North Carolina. Here's where we did the clearing. But if you go across here into Canada and out, and this ley line from Pilot Mountain is an Atlantic to Pacific ley line. It's an energy grid that connects the Atlantic to the Pacific, right? But it was blocked over here. And we got this again at Pilot Mountain. When we looked up and down psychically, we could see, oh, this was really bad up there. We saw violence, anger, and I saw a Japanese officer charging with a samurai sword, World War II. So I went and did the research, and there was the Battle of Attu, which was in the summer of 1942. The Japanese actually invaded the United States. You don't hear much about this, but they invaded the United States as a diversion for the Battle of Midway, and they came in with like 3,000 or 4,000 men and captured this area here as a threat to the U.S. So the U.S. went up there, and it turned into a violent battle. I mean, violent battle. There were a lot of Japanese wounded. Here's the poor shot of the cemetery. I think there's 500 or 600 American soldiers were killed. 2,000 Japanese soldiers were killed, and of those 2,000, 700 committed suicide. That's the mass suicide. So you talk about
why did they commit suicide?
Because they couldn't win. Because instead of being captured, they committed suicide. And a lot of them were wounded and couldn't fight. So the battle is very intense. Those who could fight charged, snuck up on the Americans, hand-to-hand combat, brutal fighting, artillery, bayonets, rifle butts. And those who couldn't attack committed mass suicide. If they were shot in the leg and they couldn't walk, or if they were unconscious, they were just given a hand grenade and told to pull the pin. So about 700 men committed suicide. Now, you want to talk about blocking a ley line? That blocked the ley line big time. So we did this, again, healing, sending the light and love up there. And eventually, and I couldn't see it, but Mark did, he said we could feel the energy lifting. And he saw hundreds and hundreds of doves flying up in circles, going up into heaven. And all of a sudden, the energy from the Atlantic to the Pacific started flowing again. And I could feel it. It was very low frequency, rumbling energy going up. And then it united. And it was like two old lovers coming back together again, so. But it was intense. When you start getting into this type of clearing, you pick up the violence, the anger, and what have you, and you have to learn how to shield yourself. And when you do this, you always have somebody in backup. So there's Mark and I working on this when his wife Linnea was home, on call in case we got in trouble. You called her, and she would help clear it out. So.
And again, this is all being done remotely, so you can tap into that energy remotely from where you are and still be able to do it with backup.
Yes, yeah. And here's some pictures taken of the Japanese who were killed during the attack. So this is heavy stuff. And I've done a lot of these, and sometimes it's gut-wrenching. Very, very bad, very bad. But this is the most important grid system If you work on this, you are clearing the earth automatically. So it comes back to the pilgrimage within, sitting in your heart and sending it out through the heart grid system. And all given to me by an elemental, the kingdom. You have to start. The good is exploring the elemental kingdom. I don't know if you feel familiar with the teachings of Alice Bailey.
No. I'm sure, the only thing I would know about the elemental kingdom is the concept that you have maybe imps, fairies, and other kind of things, because obviously historically they are included in a lot of folklore, a lot of Irish folklore. I think even when I started meditating, I think I encountered something like that during a meditation. But that's all I know about them. I don't know how they interact with human beings, or when they come out, or anything of that nature.
All right, I'm bringing up this teachings of Alice Bailey, who she channeled the ascended master Dwal Kul, who is the Tibetan, and he states clearly, point blank, that there's four kingdoms. There's four kingdoms in creation. There's a divine kingdom, the angelic kingdom, the human kingdom, and the elemental kingdom. The human kingdom and the elemental kingdom are designed to work together. We're supposed to work with the devas, because they work the law of manifestation. They work what you see. They develop it and project it down. So we hold the thought, hold the idea, and if we consciously work with them, they help project it down. So I think you study this. We should study the elemental kingdom also and work with them, especially if you're in the woods. The trees are sentient. I've talked to them. They're very wise and very smart.
But as far as having creative energy, do the elementals have the same kind of creative energy as humans do to manifest?
That's their job. They're the mechanics, or we're the engineers, and they're the guys in the factory. Let's put it that way, to simplify that. But don't forget, now, you're not only talking about little mushrooms and trees. You're talking about continents. You're talking about planets. You're talking about solar systems, and you're talking about galaxies. They create that. The elemental kingdom creates everything that's visible. So when you get, see something from the James Webb telescope about something way out in the galaxy, that's made by the elemental kingdom. The whole shooting match, the whole show is made by the elemental kingdom. So we're here. We're on their property. So you have to work with them.
Okay.
Very important. So respect the earth and work with Gaia and what have you. And they have this thing here in this part of the country. There's so many empty lots, so many unoccupied area. The owners go through and they clear cut it to sell the lumber. So they'll go through and wipe out 10 acres. Now, what happens to all the elemental spirits? They're in shock. You got to work with them to help them settle down, and especially in a battlefield. They're in shock because they're brought into this. So, a tank is made of steel, but there are elemental spirits that hold that in suspension, hold that in here so you can see it. And if that thing blows up and they get trapped with the humans who are killed in it, then they're trapped. So a lot of times when we clear a battlefield, we have to clear the elementals also.
They get trapped in that dense energy as well.
Yes.
They start to vibrate the same as whatever energy is in the area where they are after something like that happens.
Exactly. They get sucked into it because they're part of it.
So welcome back. We're here with Joseph Pio Asterita, and we finished discussing ley lines, and now we're going to go into sacred geometry, because you also create a lot of beautiful metal artwork related to sacred geometry, and I've seen a couple of them on your webpage, which later I'll be linking in the podcast. And I'd love for you to kind of go into it and discuss how it helps us energetically.
Well, thank you. It's good to be here again after our wonderful meeting before. And yeah, I started into sacred geometry about 7 or 8 years ago, where I would sketch sacred geometry, and a friend, and it was great to draw it, but I wanted to get something more substantial. A friend of mine who was a welder was in a car accident and couldn't weld for a while. So he asked me to come under his strict tutelage how to set up a welder and start cutting metal and very strict. And I started welding. When I was in the military, I used to work on airplanes with metal and aluminum. So I understood shop procedures, but not about steel. Anyway, I was just infatuated with it. This was so much fun, especially when you start welding. And then I started making basic designs on my own after I finished with him welding his stuff. I got my own welder and then started getting into different tools. And next thing you know, I'm building pyramids, a chestahedron, which is that, if you look up there in the corner of my, that's a chestahedron over my left shoulder or the shoulder. And now I've made those 8, 9, 10 feet high, and I do big flowers of life, and I'm on art shows and what have you. And I have found that the sacred geometry, especially the series I'm going to present here, is the gateway into higher consciousness. Because the earth is made up of geometrical patterns way down at the atomic to subatomic level. It's all geometry. That's what I want to present here, so you can understand the value of the sacred geometry and how we can use it for healing, for meditation. Very, what have you. I even have a little thing on how to do that in meditation. I think you'll enjoy it. I think you'll enjoy it. Anybody can do this. Anybody, you don't necessarily have to have it. You can draw it on yourself and make your own artwork. All you need is a compass and start in, and you're on your way.
Okay, so let's get into it and see what it's about. Because we can actually even just put these kind of artworks in our bedrooms in certain spaces, and it will create an effect, right? And an energetic effect.
Yes. Yeah. Or sometimes not in your bedroom, because they get too powerful and then you can't sleep at night, or you can have all the power in my house. I've had so much sacred geometry. I can't stay and I have to run outside, so I have to learn how to balance it. It depends. Okay, so here we go. It's an amazing subject, and it's very vast. I'm gonna be talking about the different aspects of it, more into what's right in front of you. But sacred geometry has to do with the design of the human body. I'll get my cursor over here. The design of the human body. The Egyptian pyramids are based on geometric principles of the phi ratio, what have you. And even the way the human hand is designed. I got this from this wonderful book over here, that your hand is designed to fit to equal the arc of the sun in 1 hour is what your hand is. So you can actually tell where the sun's going to be in another hour. Or if you're out hiking and you want to know when the sun's going to set, so you don't get caught in the dark, well, you just use your hand and figure it out. It's quite amazing how the body is designed. And I'll show that now.
It sounds phenomenal. Yeah.
Yeah. So this is the Vesuvian Man that Michelangelo drew, and it's to show the different aspects. But here's the golden ratio, which is 1 to 0.618. So from the hip to the foot, to the bottom of the foot, if that was considered 1, the hip to the knee is 0.618, 61.8% of that. And likewise with the arm, if you go from the shoulder to the tip of the hand, that would be 1. But from the shoulder to the elbow would be 0.618 of that. And I've actually done that. You measure and then you do the math. You go, God damn it, it's right. It's right on. So that's one aspect of sacred geometry. And the other aspect I told you is telling time from it and where the sun's going to be. And there's so many different aspects, from the size of a raindrop. It's, how the metric system was designed. And it gets on and on. It's very, very powerful. It's in the galactic sense, too. There's geometry in outer space and what have you. So, but I'm going to keep it to now the basic way of how we can use it. But I want to get into the 3-dimensional aspect of it. So this is the energy field around the planet right here. You see this is the energy field. And now if you got this energy field and you compressed it and shrunk it down, it would start to come in closer and closer until you get into 2-dimensional art, which is what we're working with now, or I'm working with 2-dimensional art, which would be this. This right here is that, this here, which is called the lotus of life, is that right there. So you see this here is your heart center. And
Okay.
here's the aura, you see, and this is your energy field that goes around you and the energy coming up. But that's in 3D. Kind of hard to make this, believe me, very hard to make it. So it's to make it more art oriented and easier to work with. You got that. So this is called the lotus of life.
So the light in the center would be our heart.
The light in the center would be your heart. Also, if you project it up into the higher realms, this is the throne of God right here. And these are the creational aspects of creation. So the basics here is what they call the 12 around the one. And I'll get into this in a second, but this over here is the lotus of life. We come now, if we take the center aspect of this out and go to this is the seed of life. So this is what I call the breath of creation. And here we have the seed of life. And then from here we go to the flower of life. This is part of an art show that I did. I actually took the pictures and cut it all down. So this is where the basic conversation is going to be about. Okay. Are you with these? Have you seen these before?
No, I've not. I've seen certain ideas related to, I think I was looking at something about Leviathan, and they were doing similar diagrams over the water, over like a triangle, and they were giving the I guess the same kind of circles going around it, but I'm not clear on it. So if you could explain it, would be great.
Yep, sure. All right, so let's go back to the lotus of life over here, and under the concept of 12 around the one. 12 around the one is very basic in spirituality. So you have the 12 signs of the zodiac around the one earth, right? You have the 12 months of the year around the year. 1 year, 12 months. More importantly, on a spiritual realm, you have the 12 apostles around Jesus. And if you get into the Gnostic Gospels, the Apocryphon of John, you have the 12 aspects of creation around the Creator. So 12 around the one is very important. So what you see here is 12 petals around the one center. And from here, the center, everything emanates out in creation. So everything comes back to the Creator in this form. This is what this represents. It comes out from our heart, and then from the heart or up to the Creator is the same point, but in creation, it comes out in 12 different consciousness aspects. And then it expands out to another 12, then expands out to another 12, and expands out to another 12. And I can get into the Vesica Pisces and all the different aspects of this, but that's 202 geometry. From here, we have the seed of life, and from the seed of life, we have the flower of life. So I want you to focus on this, and how does this come from that? And we go to the next sign. So again, here's the lotus of life. And you see how these center parts are? These 6 petals. These 6 petals are these 6
the ones
petals.
that are colored in. Mm-hmm.
You see that? Okay, so what happens in creation? So the lotus of life is a much higher dimensional aspect. It is the sacred geometry of the higher dimensions. But as you lower the frequencies of the dimensions to get into 3D, you can't take all of that with you. This just can't hold it. So part of it breaks out. It comes out and only 6 come down. So this 6 over there is the representation of this on Earth in the geometric realm.
And then the one that's next to it in the other picture, one is colored in, and then the other one is
of life. That comes next. Okay, so what we have here now is the basic from the seed of life. There are 6 petals, but 7 rings. So this is the basis of creation. So 7 days of creation, 7 rings. Okay, how many chakras do we have that make up the human physical body? 7 chakras. You got it? So now the blueprint is being laid. So if we could take this even further, in the seed of life, now we have within the seed of life the basis of the Star of David. You see it?
Yeah, you can tell.
Okay, and now beside the Star of David, you have the hexagon. Now let's talk about the hexagon. It's the basic building pattern of life. You know, you ever see a beehive? It's all hexagons. And the reason why is it's the only design that you can put but side to side and continue it without having any space. It's the perfect geometric design. So this is the start of, and I'm going to go show you how this gets into quantum physics in a minute. But I want to, from here, we go to the flower of life. So here is the seed. You see the seed right here? This is the basic 6. Now, when the basic 6 starts expanding out into more, this one here goes up and it forms another one. This moves over here and it forms another one, which has come back to here. This is all interlocked. This is the seed of life interlocking, and it makes the flower of life. And from the flower of life, we have what's called the metatronic geometry. These key points here, where you see the 7 chakras and the platonic solids, which is all in here, the octahedron and what have you, are all inside of here, which is an aspect of this. So now in Metatron is the archangel who designed creation. He was part of the working with the elemental kingdom. Use this type of geometry to come out with designing the planet. Now, there's a movement out here, and I've read it, it's been very influential. They call it the flower of life is a dark geometry, and they actually call it the daisy of death. There's a movement out here, and I followed that for a while, and I understood what they were saying. And I'll show you how it differs later on. It can become, what they say, this becomes locked in reincarnation. But that's not a bad thing, because Metatron knew that the human could not do this in one lifetime. He had to come back for subsequent lives. But because if there's any of you folks out there who are looking at this and saying, that's a daisy of death, hold on, I got the answer to this. Okay. So now in the metatronic geometry, so we have the seed of life, the flower of life, and from this, in that drawing I showed you before, we have the tetrahedron, the cube, the octahedron, icosahedron, the dodecahedron. So this is fire, this is earth, this is air, and this is water. Earth, air, fire, water. And this is ether, the dodecahedron. So you see how it all starts to, family is coming together. The family is coming together.
They mold together, yeah.
Yeah. So it starts with the lotus. From the lotus, it goes to the seed. From the seed, it goes from the flower. And from the seed and the flower, all of this comes out because it's interconnected when you start doing the 3D approach. So let's see where we see this. Okay, this is the Merkaba, which is 2 interlocking tetrahedrons. See it? And
yeah, this is the Merkaba. Just explain it for people who don't know. It's the field around our body that are like everything included.
Yeah, it's the geometry in which the soul travels in, and it's different from a male than it is for a female. This would be male at this kind. The female would be facing more into the. No, this is female. The male would be facing the other way, and would have the beam in front of him. In some research, this was on the Gaia channel long ago, and I apologize to get the name of the quantum physicist, very brilliant man, who figured this out, that the quantum field is actually geometric. And this is his artist's perception of the quantum field, which is now upstream of matter. So out here, upstream of matter is where you have all of the sacred geometry coming into and shaping the quantum field to shape physics. So, but what is this? It's all triangles, and it's a hexagon, and it's all tetrahedrons, and in the Merkaba, all inside of the quantum field is the quantum field. So this is how it spreads out and connects. Okay, now let's go back to the flower of life. Now, for those of you who paid attention in high school chemistry, this came to this. This is how it all works, right? What is the basic building block of matter? What atom?
Oh my gosh. If it's not
Hydrogen,
carbon, or I have no idea.
oh, hydrogen from the hydrogen atom. Okay, everything else is formed inside a star. When the star implodes, and the hydrogen makes helium, and then the star explodes, helium makes carbon, silicon, and through successive exploding stars, supernovas, you get all of the elements which form together eventually to create the planet, which 10 billion years later, here we are talking. Okay, but we're made from that. We are. So what is this over here? Look at this. This is a hydrogen atom, a series of hydrogen atoms. Look at here on the top. This is the orbiting electron, and here is the proton in the middle. Here is the orbiting electron, and here is the proton in the middle. Now you know why it's called the flower of life. The element of hydrogen is the source of life. It's the flower of all matter. It's built from that. So there are 19 rings here, 19 orbits, and there are 19 centers. And each center I have a crystal, and there's a reason for that. So do you see now how this all works? We have
it all combines.
Yeah, we have now the atomic field, and then from that, it's all downstream. So this type of, you can draw these. There's Google sites where how to draw, just type in how to draw the flower of life. Get yourself a piece of O-tag and a compass, and off you go. And follow them. Within 3 minutes, you'll have your own art, and you put it in front of it, and you meditate. I mean, it's simple as that. I mean, I've made these in steel 9 feet high, but.
Well, how is it bringing in the energy per se from a energetic point? When you draw one of these, how does it pull in energy?
It emits energy on its own. That's why it's called sacred geometry. So, here's a piece like right here. This is one I keep handy. This is a lotus of life. And I could put this lotus of life down, and it's not going to work too good. But if I get my dowsing rods, and just by putting it over the lotus of life, you see how they cross? It's picking up the energy field from that. Now, there's ways you can measure the type of energy that's coming out of here. This is all good. This is energy that's coming out. So if you ever do a meditation and you have something like this in front of you or in front of your heart center, it's projecting that energy out, and you just lay in it. And then you take that energy and then you build it up and you go deeper. It's a facilitator.
Okay. Yeah, like to facilitate it and just amplify it.
Yeah, thank you. Okay. Now, for those folks who got into the daisy of death, here's the point, and there's some value to this. And it changed me when I saw this and I researched it. Here is what they call the crystal lotus flower of life. It's another name for it. We call it the lotus of life. But it is that 12 around the 1. And the value here is that it all goes back to source. Everything comes back to the creator. In the Metatronic flower of death, in this aspect of it, in this end, they're important. It's fragmented, finite consciousness. It's closed source because it keeps bouncing back and it keeps going around. This is multiple lives of reincarnation. Okay, so again, we were designed to reincarnate so we could experience much. Now, if Metatron designed this, how could he, listen to what they're saying. I understand it, this is correct. But if you make every one of these source, every center source, and if you look at this here, every center here has got a crystal in it. And I start making these with crystals in the middle of them. You see, and crystals, and it goes back to that crystal. So that crystal from here goes to here. And as it spreads out and grows, that crystal, which is source, everything goes back to oneness. And I have one right here. I can show it to you. Ta-da! So you see the crystals in everyone?
Okay. Yeah.
Yes, that all goes back to the lotus. So this is a point of light, which is really now, if you want to say it's a proton. This point of light right here is the source of creation. It goes back to the creator. And this is an entire entity on its own. You see, everything goes back to source. Everything goes back to source. It goes back to oneness. There are mathematical progressions that we can get into to show you this mathematically, how this works. This is linked to the you heard of the Fibonacci sequence? Well, there's the source code frequency, which everything goes back to zero. Fibonacci does not go back to zero. It's limited, okay? But it has its purpose. It's part of creation.
Okay.
And then music is based on that from the 432 hertz scale. It's
solfeggio hertz.
Geometry. And the lotus.
So have you ever created a piece for a specific spiritual purpose?
Oh, next slide. Right there. Here is using the lotus of life to clear a battlefield, the White Bird battlefield in Idaho. Or was it Iowa? Where was this? Idaho. Yeah, this is the Nez Perce. Have you had the Trail of Tears in America? There's also the Trail of Sorrows, which is in the Northwest United States. This is a battle between the Nez Perce and the U.S. Cavalry. And a team I work with was out there. You can see her hand. And she put the lotus of life over the battlefield to help clear souls, help the light come through in clearing souls. Here's one doing it remotely. There's a lotus of life over a map of the Sands Creek Indian Massacre. To help, I worked with a team that was out there. Well, they were out in Colorado doing this clearing. I was here in my house with a map, helping it, and quantum entanglement, helping them. It was very, very difficult, very, very difficult clearing, very difficult. But it worked. It worked. So. And so that's the geometric pattern on how you can use sacred geometry. And of course, as I said before, here's the best geometric pattern is working with your heart, using sacred geometry to amplify that energy in your heart and then spreading it out to mankind in your pilgrimage. So
after all of this work that you do with sacred geometry, how does this teach you about source, about God? How has it deepened your walk with the Creator?
It had helped. It made sense. You know, there was a point, well, you have to have faith to understand this. But in our limited human intelligence, when you start seeing the geometrical patterns and how they all go to source, they go back to the Creator, like in the lotus of life, and how everything comes through here, the quantum field, and then the hydrogen atoms. I go, this stuff really works. It's true. You know, so it helps lock the whole thing right in. I mean, now, yeah, there's faith involved, but now I'm seeing it in real life, you know? And then when you use it to clear a battlefield or something, go, yeah. I mean, it just makes you stronger. It makes me stronger in my faith.
So it's like seeing it in a tangible way.
Say again?
It's like seeing it in a tangible way.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, it's like you want proof. And then when you get this and you go back to the source code sequence, the number sequence, or the source code spiral as opposed to Fibonacci, and you see how the number, this could be in another lesson, you see how all the numbers balance, and all the numbers, when you're going back in reverse, go back to zero. And then when you see how music on the 432 scale matches that, you go, oh my God, it's amazing. You know, that's how it all works.
Yeah, because just in case anyone doesn't know, the 432 solfeggio frequency is technically the frequency of the planet, correct?
Yes, and it was at one time the frequency all music was based on. I think it's at third C or what have you. I'm not into this. A friend of mine does everything by notes. I do frequencies. You know, we just look at each other like we're speaking foreign languages. So yes, but then if you get that 432 hertz and you start using, and you start breaking the numbers down, the frequencies for all of the keys, A, B, C, you know, in the different octaves, you'll notice that it matches the source code spiral, the source code frequencies. You go, this can't be like made up. This is right on. This is just beautiful. Now you have sound matching mathematics, which matches geometry. Bingo, home run over the fence. This is it.
Well, I want to thank you so much for joining me today. And for those of you wanting to learn more about Joseph's work, you can find the links in the podcast and to his webpage in the description below. Would you like to add anything else to it, Joseph?
My website's under mass construction, but if you do go about me, you'll have my email address, and they can contact me through my email address. But this is moving so fast. My website's still like 5 years old. So, but it's nice to look at. See all the different work I've done.
And I recommend anyone who's really interested in this to really check it out, because obviously there are not so many people in the field who know about this, correct?
There's a growing amount. There's a growing amount of really good people, but it needs more public relations. And thank you for doing this. Thank you for getting the word out and what you're doing. It's amazing. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Joseph, and God bless.
God bless. Yeah.
And if you've enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe to sacredmindshift.com so you never miss an exciting event or another discussion.